Commander Hyon stared at the star charts floating before him in the dim light of his patrol ship's bridge. 48,000 years of peace stretched behind the galaxy like a long, comfortable dream. The galactic hegemony had brought order to the chaos of space, dividing the known worlds between the three great races that had earned the right to rule. The Vorthak were beings of living crystal, their thoughts sharp and clear as cut diamonds. They controlled the inner worlds where trade flowed like rivers of gold. The Kelari moved as one mind across 1,000 bodies, managing the agricultural worlds that fed the galaxy. The Nexari existed as pure energy, dancing between stars and keeping the peace with their incredible power. All other races lived under their protection. It was a good system, Hyon thought. Safe. Predictable. His ship, the Morning Star, drifted at the edge of known space where darkness began. Out here in the Galactic Rim, nothing interesting ever happened. Pirates sometimes tried to cross from the empty void beyond, but they were usually desperate refugees from failed colonies, not real threats. That was why the sensor alert surprised him so much. "Commander," called Yeji from the scanning station. "I'm picking up something strange. Multiple contacts moving in formation." Hyon's 4 eyes focused on the display. The Kalari had excellent vision, a gift from their insect ancestors. What he saw made no sense. 7 ships moved through the darkness between stars, but they appeared and disappeared on the sensors like ghosts. "Distance?" he asked. "Too light. Hours out, sir. But that's impossible. Nothing should be out there." Hyon felt the familiar touch of the hive mind brushing against his thoughts. His queen was curious about the disturbance. Through her, he felt the attention of millions of his people turning toward this empty corner of space. "Signal the fleet," he ordered. "All patrol ships, form up on my position." Within an hour, 15 Kalari warships had gathered at the rim. They were good ships, built with technology refined over thousands of years. Their weapons could crack moons. Their shields could turn aside the fire of small stars. The strange contacts were closer now and clearer. Hyon could see them properly for the first time. The ships were beautiful and terrible. Their hulls seemed to shift color as he watched. Sometimes silver, sometimes black, sometimes a color that had no name. They moved without any visible engines, gliding through space as if the void itself carried them forward. "Scanning complete, sir," reported Yeji. "The ships are... I don't understand the readings. The metal isn't any alloy in our database. The energy signatures don't match any known technology." "Who are they?" whispered Do-Yun from the weapons station. Hyon was about to order his ships to challenge the strangers when everything changed. 1 moment the 7 ships were distant lights in the darkness. The next, they were everywhere. Not moving fast, simply existing in multiple places at once. Reality seemed to bend around them like water around stones. The communication system activated without anyone touching it. A voice spoke in the ancient Earth tongue that scholars studied but no one expected to hear. "We have returned. Prepare the galaxy for judgment. Earth." Hyon felt ice in his blood. Every school child knew about Earth and the humans who had lived there. They had destroyed themselves in nuclear fire tens of thousands of years ago, just as they were learning to build ships that could cross space. The galaxy had mourned them briefly, then moved on. Dead races did not return. "Impossible," he breathed. The voice spoke again, and this time Hyon understood it was not coming from the ship's communication systems. It was somehow speaking directly into his mind, bypassing his ears entirely. You believed us gone. You divided our worlds among yourselves. You wrote our history in your books and called it finished. But we never left. We simply stepped back to watch. One of the human ships moved closer to Hyon's fleet. As it approached, space around it began to twist. Stars that should have been. Behind the ship appeared in front of it, light bent in impossible directions. "This is Commander Hyan of the Kalari Border Defense," he transmitted on all frequencies. "Identify yourselves and state your intentions." The response came not as words, but as images that flooded his mind. He saw Earth as it had been, not the burned ruin that history described, but a world of impossible beauty. He saw humans not as the primitive creatures from old records, but as beings of light and thought who had learned to reshape matter with their will. He saw fleets beyond counting hidden in the darkness between galaxies. Ships that could move through, dimensions like fish through water, weapons that could rewrite the laws of physics themselves, and he saw the truth that would change everything. Humanity had not died. They had evolved. "Your leaders told you we destroyed ourselves," the voice continued. "They lied. We chose to leave before we became what the galaxy feared. But we have been watching, learning, growing." The images in Hyon's mind shifted. He saw the galactic hegemony from a new perspective, not as protectors of peace, but as children playing with toys while adults watched from the shadows. Every war that had been prevented, every crisis that had been solved, every technological breakthrough that had saved civilizations, all of it guided by unseen human hands. We return now because the galaxy stands at a crossroads. You can continue as you are, safe in your small understanding of what is possible. Or you can join us in something greater. Hyon tried to respond, tried to ask the questions that burned in his mind. But something was happening to his thoughts. The bright clarity that came from the hive mind was fading. His memories of the last few minutes began to blur like writing in the rain. "Sleep now," the voice said gently. "When you wake, you will. Remember only that something has changed. The galaxy's long childhood is ending." Darkness took him. When Hyon opened his eyes again, he was lying on the floor of his bridge. His crew was stirring around him, all looking confused. The sensor displays showed empty space. No sign of the impossible ships. "What happened?" asked Yeji, rubbing her head. Hyon tried to remember, but found only fragments. Strange ships that bent light. A voice speaking words that changed everything. The feeling that the universe had suddenly become much larger and more dangerous than he had ever imagined. "I don't know," he said. But even as the words left his mouth, he felt a certainty deep in his bones. Something fundamental had changed. The long peace was ending. In the darkness between stars, 7 ships that should not exist continued their journey toward the heart of the galaxy. Behind them, they left only questions and the growing sense that everything the galaxy thought it knew was about to be proven wrong. The humans had returned, and nothing would ever be the same. Dr. Yunbi knelt in the dirt of New Geneva, her tools spread around her like the instruments of a surgeon. The dead human colony had been her life's work for 3 years now. Every day brought new mysteries from the ruins of humanity's brief reach into space. The official record said the humans had destroyed themselves in the year 2157, turning their homeworld into radioactive ash, just as they were building their first real starships. New Geneva had been one of only 12 colonies they managed to establish before their civilization collapsed, but the evidence told a different story. Yunbi brushed dust from another strange device, this one no larger than her hand but impossibly complex. Her scanners could not identify the materials it was made from. The quantum signatures were unlike anything in the galactic database. According to her instruments, the device had been created less than a century ago. That was impossible. New Geneva had been dead for 48,000 years. Another one? Asked her assistant, Kangmin. The young Nexari flickered between energy and matter as he moved, his curiosity making his form unstable. The 15th this week, Yunbi replied. She held up the device, turning it in the afternoon sun. Look at this craftsmanship. These joints are welded at the molecular level. The power source is some kind of contained fusion reaction that should be impossible to miniaturize. She placed the device carefully in the preservation field with the others. Each one was a puzzle that challenged everything the galaxy thought it knew about human technology. The ruins of New Geneva stretched across the valley below them. From a distance, it looked like any other dead colony. Buildings collapsed by time, streets buried under 40 millennia of dust. But up close, the details were wrong. The buildings had not fallen from age or disaster. They had been carefully dismantled. The valuable materials had been removed with surgical precision. What remained was not the wreckage of a civilization's end, but the careful cleanup after a planned evacuation. Dr. Yunbi, Kangmin said, his voice uncertain. Someone is coming. She looked up from her work to see a figure walking up the hillside toward their excavation site. At first glance, he appeared to be Vorthak, tall and thin with the angular features of the Crystal People. But as he came closer, she noticed things that were not quite right. His movements were too smooth, too fluid for a Vorthak. His clothes were simple but made from materials she did not recognize. And his eyes held depths that seemed to contain entire lifetimes of knowledge. Dr. Yunbi, the stranger said, his voice carrying a strange accent. My name is Jiho. I represent the Terran Archaeological Preservation Society. Yunbi frowned. She had never heard of such an organization. I wasn't aware that anyone else was working on human sites. We are a specialized group. We have been monitoring your work here with great interest. Jiho's knowledge of the site was remarkable. He pointed to areas where Yunbi had made her most important discoveries and described them with perfect accuracy. He spoke about human culture and technology with the confidence of someone who had studied them for a lifetime, but there was something else in his manner that made Yunbi uncomfortable. He spoke about the humans not as a dead race to be studied, but as people he had known personally. Your reports have been very thorough, Jiho continued. Particularly your observations about the dating inconsistencies. You've read my reports? Yunbi asked. They haven't been published yet? We have access to many databases. Kangmin moved closer to Yunbi, his energy form crackling with nervous tension. Young Nexari were sensitive to deception, and something about Jiho clearly disturbed him. What do you want? Yunbi asked directly. To show you the truth. Jiho reached into his coat and withdrew a device similar to the ones Yunbi had been finding, but this one was active, humming with contained power. Lights pulsed along its surface in patterns that seemed almost alive. 48,000 years ago, Jiho said, the humans faced a choice. They could stay in this galaxy and risk becoming what their nature might drive them to become. Or they could leave, taking only what they needed and leaving the rest for others to find when they were ready. What are you talking about? Yunbi demanded. They chose to leave, but they also chose to watch. The device in Jiho's hand began to glow brighter. The air around him started to shimmer like heat waves rising from hot stone. As Yunbi watched in amazement, his Vorthak appearance began to fade away like a discarded disguise. Underneath the illusion stood a human. He was tall and lean, with dark hair and the kind of face that belonged in the old historical records. But his eyes held depths that no ancient human had ever possessed. He looked at Yunbi with the patient wisdom of someone who had watched civilizations rise and fall like waves on a beach. "My name is Jiho," he said again, "and I am human." Kangmin's energy form flared bright with shock. Yunbi found herself unable to speak. Humans were extinct. Everyone knew that. The galaxy had mourned them and moved on thousands of years before. She was born. "You're lying," she whispered. "Your own evidence says otherwise. The devices you found, the careful dismantling of the colony, the signs of evacuation rather than destruction, what do you think it all means?" Jiho gestured toward the ruins below them. "New Geneva was not abandoned because the humans died. It was abandoned because they chose to leave. All 12 colonies were evacuated in the same way, clean, careful, leaving only traces for future archaeologists to puzzle over. But the nuclear war on Earth never happened. That story was convenient for all involved. The humans needed a reason to disappear without causing panic. The emerging galactic powers needed a cautionary tale about the dangers of aggressive expansion." Yunbi's mind raced. Everything she had built her career on was crumbling before her eyes. Where did they go? Beyond the galactic rim, into regions your people consider uninhabitable. They spent 50,000 years learning, growing, becoming something new. Jiho's expression grew serious. "And now, they are coming back." The device in his hand pulsed once, and images began to form in the air above it. Yunbi saw ships unlike anything in the galactic fleets, vessels that seemed to exist in multiple dimensions at once. She saw humans who could manipulate matter with their thoughts and travel between stars without ships. "Why are you telling me this?" she asked. "Because the galaxy needs to understand what is coming. The humans did not die, Dr. Yunbi. They evolved, and they have been watching everything that happened in their absence." The images shifted to show scenes from across the galaxy. Yunbi saw familiar worlds, familiar faces, but now she noticed things she had never seen before. Small inconsistencies, technologies that appeared without explanation, crises that resolved themselves too neatly. "You've been here the whole time," she breathed. "Not all of us, but enough. We needed to understand what the galaxy had become in our absence, whether the younger races were ready for the truth. And are we?" Jiho's smile was both sad and hopeful. "That remains to be seen. But the time for hiding is over. The humans are returning in force, and they bring with them technologies and knowledge that will change everything." He began to walk away, his human form shimmering as the disguise reasserted itself. "Continue your work, Dr. Yunbi. Publish your findings. Let the galaxy know that their understanding of history is incomplete." "Wait!" she called after him. "What happens next?" Jiho paused and looked back at her. For a moment, his disguise failed completely, and she saw him as he truly was. Not just human, but something more. Something that had transcended the limitations of any single species. "Next," he said, "the galaxy learns that humanity's greatest achievement was not reaching for the stars. It was knowing when to step back and wait for the right moment to return." As he disappeared over the hill, Yunbi looked down at the ruins of New Geneva with new eyes. Every careful cut in the metal, every precisely removed component, every sign of planned evacuation now told a different story. The humans had not died in fire and chaos. They had simply packed up and left, taking their secrets with them. And, now after 50,000 years of silence, they were coming home. The galaxy was about to discover that its most dangerous assumption was believing that extinct meant gone forever. The Vorthak High Council chamber had not seen such tension in 3,000 years. Representatives from across the galaxy filled the crystal seats, their voices echoing off the walls in a dozen different languages. Emergency sessions were rare, but the reports coming in from the rim worlds had left them no choice. Ships that should not exist, technologies that defied explanation, and rumors growing stronger each day that the extinct humans had somehow returned. Counselor Veltar struck the resonance crystal with his staff, and the chamber fell silent. The Vorthak leader's crystalline form caught the light and threw it back in sharp rainbows. "We have called this emergency session," Veltar announced, "to address the growing reports of anomalous activities at the Galactic Rim. Trade Minister Minho will present his analysis." Minho rose from his seat with the careful grace that had made him valuable to the Vorthak for over 3 centuries. He was tall and thin like all his kind, with the angular features and translucent skin that marked him as one of the Crystal People. His knowledge of galactic trade routes was legendary. His advice had prevented 2 wars and opened trade with 17 new species. What no one in the chamber suspected was that Minho was not Vorthak at all. "Honored counselors," Minho began, his voice carrying the familiar harmonic overtones of his supposed species. "The reports from our rim worlds are disturbing." He gestured, and holographic displays filled the air above the council floor. Ship designs that bent the laws of physics, energy readings that made no sense, sensor logs that showed vessels appearing and disappearing like ghosts. "Initial analysis suggested these were ships from beyond our galaxy," Minho continued. "Explorers, from distant clusters perhaps, or refugees from some unknown catastrophe." Murmurs rippled through the chamber. Contact with extragalactic civilizations was the stuff of theoretical discussions, not reality. "However," Minho said, his voice carrying a strange new weight, "further investigation has revealed something far more significant." The displays changed. Now they showed ancient Earth, its blue oceans and white clouds hanging in space like a lost dream. Then came images of the early human colonies. New Geneva, Kepler Station, the mining outposts around Tau Ceti. The ships bear design elements, consistent with early human technology, Minho announced, but evolved far beyond what should have been possible for a species that destroyed itself 48,000 years ago. Counselor Zaraka leaned forward, her crystal matrix flashing with disbelief. "Impossible! The humans are extinct. We have studied their ruins for millennia." Minho smiled, and something in that expression made every being in the chamber suddenly uncomfortable. "Have we?" he asked quietly. He raised his hand, and the holographic projectors responded to his gesture without any visible control device. The displays shifted again, showing detailed maps of human colonies that had never been in any galactic database. "Tell me, honored counselors, how did we know so much about human culture despite their brief existence? How did we learn their languages so quickly? How did we understand their technology well enough to salvage it?" The questions hung in the air like accusations. Veltar's crystalline form began to resonate with tension. "What are you suggesting, Trade Minister?" I am suggesting, Minho said, that everything this council believes about human extinction is a carefully maintained lie. The chamber erupted in outraged voices. Accusations of madness flew through the air. Several councilors demanded Minho's immediate removal from office. But Minho was no longer listening to them. Instead, he was concentrating on something far more difficult than trade negotiations or political maneuvering. He was dropping a disguise he had maintained for 300 years. The change began slowly. His translucent crystal skin started to shift, becoming opaque and warm. His angular features softened. His tall, thin frame filled out with muscle and bone that belonged to an entirely different evolutionary path. The chamber fell silent as they watched Trade Minister Minho transform before their eyes into something that should not exist. A human. "My name," he said in a voice that no longer carried harmonic overtones, "is Minho, and I have been watching you for 3 centuries." The silence that followed was so complete that the only sound was the gentle hum of the chamber's environmental systems. Finally, Veltar found his voice. "What are you?" "I am human," Minho replied simply, "as are approximately 12,000 other beings currently serving in various positions throughout galactic civilization. We have been here all along, watching, learning, making sure that the galaxy developed along peaceful lines." Counselor. Thexman, representing the Kalari, spoke in a voice tight with shock. "The humans died. We have the records. We witnessed the nuclear fires on Earth." "You witnessed what we wanted you to see," Minho corrected. "The human race faced a choice 48,000 years ago. We could remain in this galaxy and risk becoming a threat to younger species, or we could withdraw and allow natural development to proceed." He gestured again, and the displays showed images that made the counselors gasp. Vast fleets hidden in the darkness between galaxies. Cities built inside pocket dimensions. Technologies that treated the laws of physics as suggestions rather than absolute rules. "We chose withdrawal," Minho continued, "but we also chose vigilance. Small groups of volunteers remained behind, disguised as members of various species, to monitor galactic development and provide guidance when necessary." "Guidance?" Veltar's voice cracked like breaking crystal. "You manipulated us! We prevented 17 wars that would have devastated entire sectors. We guided the development of technologies that allowed peaceful contact between species. We ensured that aggressive civilizations learned restraint before they could threaten others." The displays shifted again, showing crisis after crisis that had been resolved through subtle intervention. Trade disputes that ended in unexpected compromise. Territorial conflicts that dissolved when key leaders suddenly found new perspectives. Scientific breakthroughs that appeared just when they were most needed. Every major positive development in galactic history, Minho said, has had human involvement. Not control, guidance. We learned to touch lightly, to suggest rather than command. Counselor Nexus Prime, the energy being who represented the Nexari, pulsed with confused patterns. "If your people are so advanced, why reveal yourselves now?" Minho's expression grew serious. "Because the training period is over. The galaxy has reached the point where it must choose its own path forward, and our people have decided it is time to return." "Return?" Veltar whispered. "The main human civilization is coming back, not as conquerors, but as teachers. What you have achieved in our absence is remarkable, but it is only the beginning. We offer to help you take the next step." "And if we refuse?" Minho's smile was sad, but determined. then you will take that step anyway, but it will be much more difficult. The universe is vast, counselors. What you consider galactic civilization is barely a small town by cosmic standards. Beyond our galaxy lie wonders and terrors that you cannot imagine. He gestured one final time, and the displays showed images from deep space. Other galaxies, other civilizations, technologies that made even the advanced human ships look primitive. The humans learned long ago that survival requires more than individual strength. It requires cooperation, wisdom, and the willingness to grow beyond current limitations. We offer to teach these lessons to any species willing to learn. The chamber was silent for a long moment. Finally, Veltar spoke. "How many of you are there? How long have you been among us?" "Long enough to know that most species in this galaxy have the potential for greatness," Minho replied. "And numerous enough to have influenced every major decision made by this council for the past 20,000 years. He paused, letting that revelation sink in. "The comfortable reality you have known is ending, counselors. But what comes next will be far more magnificent than anything you can currently imagine. The only question is whether you will meet the future as partners or as children who must be guided every step of the way." As the council struggled to process this new reality, Minho activated a communication device that appeared in his hand without any visible source. His words went out across the galaxy to thousands of other hidden humans. "This is Minho. The masquerade is over. Begin Phase 2. Across the galaxy, in positions of trust and authority that they had held for centuries, other humans began to reveal themselves. The Great Deception was ending, and the galaxy was about to learn that its comfortable understanding of reality had always been an illusion maintained by their most careful guardians. The humans had never left. They had simply been waiting for the right moment to step out of the shadows and offer their children a chance to grow up. Captain Su-Yung stood on the bridge of the Prometheus Reborn and watched reality bend around her ship like water around a stone. Through the transparent aluminum viewports, she could see the heart of galactic civilization spread out before her. Millions of stars that had been divided and ruled by species who thought they understood the universe. They were about to learn how little they actually knew. "Dimensional translation complete," reported her science officer, Deho. His hands moved through holographic controls that responded to his thoughts as much as his touch. "We are now existing in normal space-time. The Galactic Council should be able to detect us." "Let them detect us," Su-Yung said quietly. "It's time they understood what they're really dealing with." The Prometheus Reborn had traveled from humanity's hidden empire beyond the galactic rim using technologies that made faster-than-light travel look primitive. They had not moved through space so much as convinced space to move around them. The journey that should have taken decades had been completed in a matter of hours. Now they hung in the void near the Galactic Council's primary station, a massive structure that had been the center of galactic government for 20,000 years. Council ships were already moving to intercept them, sleek vessels armed with weapons that could crack planets. Su-Yung was not impressed. "They're hailing us," announced Communications Officer Seojin. Like all the crew, his connection to the ship went far deeper than traditional interfaces. The Prometheus Reborn was not just a vessel, but a living extension of human consciousness, its systems responding to will and intention as much as explicit commands. "Open a channel," Su-Yung ordered. The face that appeared on the main display belonged to Admiral Corthan of the Vorthak fleet. His crystalline features were set in lines of barely controlled anger. Unknown vessel. You have entered restricted space without authorization. Identify yourself immediately or we will be forced to take action. Suyong smiled. Admiral Korthun, your reputation precedes you. This is Captain Suyong of the Terran Diplomatic Corps. I am here to formally announce humanity's return to galactic civilization. The silence that followed was so complete that Suyong could hear the gentle hum of her ship's organic systems. Finally, Korthun found his voice. Impossible. The humans are extinct. Do I look extinct to you, Admiral? Suyong gestured, and the ship's external cameras focused on the bridge, transmitting her image directly to the Council fleet. She looked entirely human. Dark hair, warm skin, eyes that held depths of experience that no extinct species should possess. But there was something else in her appearance that made Korthun step back from his own viewing screen. She looked at him with the patient confidence of someone who had seen civilizations rise and fall like waves on a beach. This is some kind of deception, Korthun declared. Shapeshifters or advanced holograms. The humans destroyed themselves 48,000 years ago. Admiral, Suyong said gently, would you like a demonstration of what actual human technology can accomplish? She nodded to her crew, and they began to activate systems that had been dormant during their journey. Engineer Yuna interfaced directly with the ship's consciousness through organic neural networks that ran throughout the vessel like veins. Dr. Seokjin manipulated the quantum structure of matter itself, preparing for a display that would leave no doubt about humanity's capabilities. The first sign that something was happening came from the Council fleet's sensors. Every ship in the formation suddenly detected energy readings that should have been impossible. The human vessel was drawing power from sources that did not appear to exist. What are your sensors telling you, Admiral? Suyong asked pleasantly. Korthun's crystalline form was flashing with rapid color changes, a sign of extreme agitation in his species. Power readings are... they're off the scale. How are you generating that much energy? We're not generating it, Deho explained, his voice carrying across the communication channel. We're borrowing it from the quantum vacuum itself. Every cubic centimeter of empty space contains enough energy to boil away your oceans. We simply learned how to ask politely. The demonstration continued. Yuna caused the ship's hull to shift and flow like living metal, rearranging its structure in ways that defied every known principle of engineering. The vessel grew larger, then smaller, then seemed to exist in multiple configurations simultaneously. Seokjin manipulated local gravity, causing space around the ship to bend visibly. Stars that should have been behind the Prometheus Reborn appeared to be in front of it. Light curved in impossible directions, creating patterns that hurt to look at directly. "Stop this," Korthun demanded, his voice tight with fear. "You're violating the fundamental laws of physics." "No, Admiral," Suyong corrected. "We're demonstrating that what you call fundamental laws are actually local customs. The universe is far more flexible than your science suggests." She gestured again, and the ship's true nature began to reveal itself. What the Council fleet had thought was a single vessel was actually a complex organism that existed partially in normal space and partially in dimensions that had no names. Its hull was alive, its systems were conscious, and its capabilities were limited only by the imagination of its crew. "This ship is not built," Suyong explained. "It is grown. Every component is a living system that responds to human thought and will. We gave up the distinction between technology and biology long ago." Daiho added his own demonstration, reaching out with his mind to touch the Council ship's systems, not to damage or control them, but to understand them completely in the space of a heartbeat. Within seconds, he knew more about Vorthak engineering than most Vorthak engineers. "Your ships are well designed," he said conversationally. "Efficient, use of crystalline matrices for data storage. Very elegant. But you could improve your power distribution by approximately 30% if you reconfigured your core systems along biological principles. The casual violation of their most secure systems sent shockwaves through the Council fleet." Admiral Corthon realized that the human had not hacked their computers. He had simply looked at them and understood everything there was to know. "What do you want?" Corthon whispered. "To talk," Su-Yung replied. "The human civilization has been watching the galaxy's development for 50,000 years. We are pleased with much of what we have seen. The peace you have maintained, the cooperation between species, the gradual expansion of knowledge and understanding. These are remarkable achievements." She paused, her expression growing more serious. "But the galaxy has also stagnated. You have created stability at the cost of growth. Younger species are held back to maintain the balance of power. Entire civilizations are prevented from reaching their potential because change is seen as dangerous." "Stability is necessary," Corthon protested. "Without the hegemony's guidance, there would be chaos." "Perhaps," Su-Yung acknowledged. "But there would also be growth, discovery, evolution. The three great races have maintained their positions for 20,000 years, not through superior wisdom, but through superior fear of change." The ship's systems hummed softly as more human vessels began to appear around the Council fleet. They materialized not from faster-than-light travel, but from dimensional spaces that had always been there, waiting. Within minutes, the 15 Council ships found themselves surrounded by hundreds of human vessels, each one a marvel that redefined what was possible. "How many of you are there?" Corthon asked, his voice barely audible. "Enough," Su-Yung replied. "We offer the galaxy a choice, Admiral. You can continue as you have, maintaining stability through stagnation, or you can join us in something greater." "And if we refuse?" Su-Yung's smile was both sad and determined. "Then you will continue as you have. But the universe will not wait for you to be ready. Beyond this galaxy lie wonders and terrors that make your greatest achievements look like children's toys. Eventually, you will need to grow beyond your current limitations. We simply offer to help with that process." She gestured one final time, and the space around the Council fleet filled with images from deep space. Other galaxies, other civilizations, technologies that operated on scales that dwarfed entire star systems. "The comfortable reality you have, known is ending, Admiral. But what comes next will be far more magnificent than anything you can currently imagine. The only question is whether you will meet the future as partners or as children who need protection from their own potential." As the Council fleet struggled to process what they had witnessed, Su-Yung knew that this was only the beginning. The demonstration had been necessary to establish credibility, but the real work would come in the days and weeks ahead. The galaxy was about to learn that humanity's greatest achievement was not their technology, but their wisdom to use it carefully. And their greatest gift to offer was not solutions to current problems, but the understanding that much greater problems and opportunities lay ahead. Fleet Admiral Jinwoo stood in the command center of the New Earth, watching holographic displays that showed the entire galaxy in real time. Every star system, every inhabited world, every ship moving through space, all of it was visible to the returned human fleet through technologies that made the Council's best surveillance networks look like children's toys. What he saw troubled him deeply. The galaxy had not just stagnated, it had actively suppressed growth. For 20,000 years, the three great races had maintained their dominance not through wisdom or superior ability, but through carefully calculated policies that kept younger species from reaching their potential. "Show me the Andromen system," Jinwu ordered. The display zoomed in on a star system in the outer rim. The Andromen were a young species that had developed spaceflight only 5,000 years ago. Their ships were crude but functional. Their society was organized but still growing. They should have been exploring neighboring systems, establishing colonies, reaching for greatness. Instead, they were confined to their home system by a web of trade restrictions and technological limitations that kept them dependent on the Council for everything from advanced materials to star charts. They could have achieved interstellar civilization 3,000 years ago, reported cultural analyst Nari, her voice tight with anger. The Council deliberately restricted their access to certain metals and energy sources, kept them small, kept them grateful for what little they were allowed to have. Jinwu's expression darkened. This was the pattern they had found throughout the galaxy. Dozens of species with the potential for greatness, all carefully managed to prevent them from threatening the established order. What about the Kelvari? Collective? Another system appeared on the display. The Kelvari were an aquatic species that had developed remarkable bioengineering capabilities. Their cities grew like coral reefs. Their ships were living creatures that could repair themselves and adapt to new environments. Biotech suppression protocols, Nari reported. The Council classified their genetic engineering as potentially dangerous and restricted their access to certain research materials. They could have revolutionized medicine and ecological restoration across the galaxy. Instead, they're limited to maintaining their own small fleet of bioships. System after system told the same story. The Zephyrins, who had developed gravity manipulation technology, were prevented from advancing beyond simple gravity plates. The crystalline minds of Vega had created a form of quantum consciousness that could have transformed computer science, but their research was declared incompatible with galactic safety standards. "How many?" Jinwu asked quietly. 47 species with clear evidence of deliberate suppression, Nari replied. Another 123 with suspicious technological gaps. The pattern is consistent across all sectors of Council. Space. Jinwu closed his eyes and felt the weight of 50,000 years pressing down on him. Humanity had withdrawn from the galaxy to avoid becoming the oppressors. Instead, they had allowed others to fill that role. "Admiral," reported Communications Officer Tae-hyung, "we're receiving response signals from our embedded agents throughout the galaxy. The revelation of our presence has caused significant disruption in Council leadership." "Show me." The displays shifted to show emergency sessions taking place across dozens of worlds. Council representatives argued in heated debates about how to respond to humanity's return. Some called for immediate military action. Others demanded negotiations. A few wise voices suggested that perhaps it was time to examine their own policies. But what concerned Jinwu most were the reports from younger species. Word of humanity's return was spreading through underground networks, carried by traitors and rebels who had always resented Council restrictions. Hope was beginning to stir in places where it had been carefully suppressed for millennia. "They're expecting us to save them," Jinwu murmured. "Isn't that what we're here for?" asked his second-in-command, Captain Minjun. "No," Jinwu replied firmly. "We're here to give them the opportunity to save themselves." He turned to address the assembled officers of the human fleet. Hundreds of ships had taken position throughout the galaxy, their crews waiting for orders that would reshape the balance of power that had stood for 20,000 years. "The council races have had their chance to guide galactic development," Jinwu announced. "They chose stability over growth, control over freedom. That era is ending." He gestured, and the displays showed the full extent of the human fleet. Not the hundreds of ships that had revealed themselves, but the millions that remained hidden in dimensional folds and pocket universes. Each one was a marvel of post-technological engineering, crewed by humans who had evolved far beyond their biological origins. "We will give every species in this galaxy a choice," Jinwu continued. "They can remain as they are, accepting guidance from those who have held them back for millennia, or they can join us in the next phase of galactic evolution." "And if the council objects?" asked Captain Soyan. Jinwu's smile was cold as space itself. "Then they will learn that their authority was always provisional. They maintained power because we allowed it. That permission is hereby revoked." The orders went out across the human fleet. Ships that had remained hidden began to reveal themselves, appearing near every major council facility and strategic resource. Point. They did not attack or threaten. They simply made their presence known. The message was clear. The galaxy now operated under new management. On the council homeworlds, emergency meetings convened with unprecedented urgency. The comfortable assumption that they controlled galactic civilization crumbled as sensor reports flooded in. Human ships appeared to be everywhere, demonstrating technologies that made the Council's most advanced vessels look like primitive sailing. Craft Admiral Korthun, still reeling from his encounter with Captain Suyung, found himself briefing a room full of terrified officials. "They've been watching us," he reported, his crystalline form flickering with stress patterns. "Every decision we've made, every policy we've implemented, they've seen it all, and they're not pleased with what they've observed." "How many ships do they have?" demanded Counselor Veltar. "Unknown. They appear and disappear at will. Our best estimates suggest at least 50,000 vessels, but it could be 10 times that number." The room fell silent. The entire Council fleet numbered less than 10,000 ships. If humanity truly commanded the forces that their scouts reported, resistance would be suicide. "What do they want?" whispered Counselor Zaraka. Before Korthun could answer, the chamber's communication systems activated without authorization. A human face appeared on every screen. Fleet Admiral Jinwu, his expression calm but implacable. "Honored representatives of the Galactic Council," he began. "I am Fleet Admiral Jinwu of the Terran Federation. We have returned to evaluate the galaxy's development during our absence." His words were translated instantly into every language spoken in council space, carried by systems that the humans had infiltrated so thoroughly that resistance was impossible. "We have observed your stewardship of galactic civilization with great interest. You have maintained peace. This is commendable. You have prevented wars. This is wise. But you have also suppressed growth, stifled innovation, and denied countless species the opportunity to reach their potential." The image shifted to show data that made the council representatives gasp in shock. Complete records of their suppression, policies, detailed analyses of technologies that had been banned or restricted, evidence of deliberate interference in the development of younger species. "This pattern of control disguised as protection ends now," Jinwu continued. "Every species in this galaxy will be given the choice to develop according to their own potential, not according to your limitations. You cannot simply overturn 20,000 years of galactic order," Veltar protested. Jinwoo's expression did not change. We are not overturning anything. We are removing the artificial constraints that you have imposed. The natural order of growth and development will resume. That will lead to chaos. Perhaps. But it will also lead to greatness. The species you have kept small and dependent have the potential to achieve wonders that you cannot imagine. We intend to give them that opportunity. The transmission ended, leaving the council chamber in stunned silence. Outside, human ships continued their patient vigil, waiting to see how the galaxy would respond to its new freedom. On worlds throughout council space, younger species received messages that they had never expected to hear. The restrictions that had limited their growth for millennia were lifted. The technologies that had been denied to them were suddenly available. The future, which had seemed fixed and limited, was now wide open. Some species would indeed choose chaos. Others would choose wisdom, but all would choose for themselves, without the paternalistic guidance of races that had confused stagnation with stability. The test of worthiness had begun, and the galaxy would discover what it could become when its children were finally allowed to grow up. Dr. Boyoung stood in the center of the Consciousness Expansion Laboratory aboard the human research vessel Transcendence, watching her first volunteer subject prepare for a transformation that would change everything about how they understood existence. The volunteer was Kenthara, a young Vorthak scientist who had been among the first to request participation in what humans called the Great Acceleration. She lay on the bio-neural interface bed, her crystalline form refracting the soft light that emanated from the walls themselves. "Are you certain about this?" Boyoung asked gently. "The process is irreversible. You will still be yourself, but you will also be much more than yourself." Kenthara's crystal matrix pulsed with determined colors. "My people have spent 20,000 years perfecting our understanding of crystal matrices and energy flow. But the humans have shown us that consciousness itself can be treated as a technology. I want to understand what we've been missing." Boyoung smiled and activated the systems that would guide Kenthara through the expansion process. This was not genetic engineering or cybernetic enhancement. It was something far more fundamental. The Great Acceleration worked by removing the artificial limitations that biology and culture had placed on consciousness itself. "The process will feel strange at first," Boyoung explained as neural interface tendrils began to connect with Kenthara's crystal structure. "You will become aware of quantum-scale reality, of the spaces between thoughts, of the connections that link all conscious beings. Don't fight it. Let your awareness expand naturally." The transformation began slowly. Kenthara's crystal form started to resonate with frequencies that had no names, her consciousness expanding beyond the boundaries of her individual mind. She could suddenly perceive the quantum foam that underlay all reality, the infinite probability, clouds that determined how matter and energy behaved. But more than that, she could feel the presence of other minds around her, not just the humans in the laboratory, but conscious beings throughout the ship, throughout the fleet, throughout the galaxy. The isolation that had always defined individual existence began to dissolve. "I can feel everyone," Kenthara whispered, her voice carrying harmonics that she had never been able to produce before. "The loneliness is gone." "That's just the beginning," Boyoung assured her. "Now try to interface with the ship's systems. Don't use your hands or voice. Just extend your consciousness toward them." Kenthara reached out with her mind and felt the ship respond. The transcendence was not just a vessel, but a living entity. Its consciousness intertwined with those of its crew. She could sense its thoughts, its purposes, its vast knowledge of the universe. Through the ship, she could access databases that contained the accumulated wisdom of 50,000 years of human development. Scientific principles that her people had spent millennia trying to understand were suddenly clear and obvious. Technologies that had seemed like magic revealed themselves as natural extensions of consciousness applied to matter and energy. "This is incredible," she breathed. "How do you manage to maintain individual identity when you're connected to so much?" "Practice," Boyong replied. "And the understanding that individual identity becomes stronger, not weaker, when it's part of a larger consciousness. You don't lose yourself by connecting with others. You discover who you really are." The process continued for several hours, each stage building on the last. Kenthara learned to perceive multiple dimensions simultaneously, to manipulate matter at the molecular level through directed will, to communicate directly with other conscious beings regardless of species or location. Most remarkably, she began to understand the true nature of the universe itself. Reality was not a fixed structure, but a collaborative creation maintained by the collective consciousness of all living beings. The laws of physics were not immutable, but could be modified by sufficiently advanced understanding. "No wonder the Council kept us separated," she said as the process neared completion. "If species had worked together instead of being kept apart, we could have achieved this level of understanding millennia ago." "That was the tragedy we observed during our exile," Boyong agreed. "So much potential wasted through artificial limitations and fear of change." When the transformation was complete, Kenthara rose from the interface bed as something new. She was still Vorthok. Her crystal structure remained intact, her cultural memories preserved. But she was also something more, connected to a network of consciousness that spanned the galaxy and beyond. "I need to show this to my people," she said, her voice now carrying undertones that spoke directly to the consciousness of anyone who heard them. "They need to understand what's possible." Across the galaxy, similar transformations were taking place in laboratories and medical centers that had been established by the human fleet. Volunteers from dozens of species were discovering that the boundaries they had thought were permanent were actually choices that could be changed. The Kelari discovered that individuals could maintain their connection to the hive mind while developing unique personalities and perspectives. The collective consciousness became richer and more complex as individual voices added their own notes to the symphony. Nexari energy beings learned to stabilize their matter forms, creating physical bodies that allowed them to interact with the material universe in ways they had never imagined possible. They could now experience texture, taste, and the simple pleasure of physical touch. The younger species found their suppressed potentials suddenly unleashed. The Andromen developed space folding, technology that made faster-than-light travel look primitive. The Kelvari's bioengineering capabilities exploded into new forms of life that could survive in environments that would kill any natural organism. But not every species chose transformation. Ambassador Taehyung worked with the groups that preferred to remain as they were, establishing protected regions where unchanged species could develop naturally without pressure to undergo the Great Acceleration. "Evolution is not abandonment of the past," he explained to a gathering of traditionalist leaders. "It's the expansion of possibilities. Those who choose to remain as they are will be protected and honored. Diversity of approach is one of the Galaxy's Greatest Strengths. The Sonari Collective, an ancient species of energy patterns that existed in gas giant atmospheres, chose to maintain their traditional forms but accepted human guidance in developing their understanding of consciousness. They became teachers themselves, sharing their unique perspectives on existence with species that had never imagined life could exist in such environments. The quarantine worlds, populated by species that had been deemed too dangerous for general galactic contact, were offered the same choices as everyone else. Most chose some form of enhancement, using their new capabilities to transform their aggressive natures into drives for exploration and creation. The transformations were not without challenges. Some individuals struggled with the expanded awareness, finding it difficult to maintain their sense of self when connected to such vast networks of consciousness. Human counselors worked with them, teaching meditation techniques and mental disciplines that had been developed over millennia. Others worried about losing their cultural identity in the rush toward transcendence. Support groups formed where beings could share their concerns and learn from others who had successfully navigated the transition while maintaining their connection to their heritage. Change is always frightening, Boyung explained, to a gathering of newly transformed beings. But the fear comes from thinking that growth means losing what you are. In reality, it means becoming more of what you are. The galaxy began to transform at an accelerating pace. Trade routes that had been controlled by the Council for millennia opened to all species. Technologies that had been restricted became freely available. Scientific research that had been limited by artificial barriers exploded into new discoveries that benefited everyone. Most importantly, the artificial conflicts that had been used to maintain the balance of power began to disappear. When conscious beings could communicate directly with each other, when they could understand each other's perspectives and needs, most disputes resolved themselves naturally. The few conflicts that remained were addressed by beings whose expanded consciousness allowed them to see solutions that had been invisible to limited awareness. Problems that had seemed unsolvable, resource scarcity, territorial disputes, philosophical differences, dissolved when approached from the perspective of expanded consciousness. This is what we hoped would happen when we first went into exile, Taehyung reported to the human leadership. The galaxy is finally beginning to realize its potential. But even as the transformations accelerated, the humans were preparing for the next phase of their plan. The expansion of consciousness beyond the galaxy itself to make contact with the cosmic community of evolved civilizations that existed throughout the universe. The choice of evolution had been offered, and most of the galaxy had chosen to grow. Now it was time to discover what lay beyond the boundaries of their small corner of space, and to take their place in something unimaginably vast and wonderful. The galaxy's childhood was ending, and its true journey was about to begin. Administrator Min Seok stood on the observation deck of New Geneva Station, looking out at a galaxy transformed beyond recognition. 5 years had passed since humanity's return, and the changes were visible even from space, where once there had been rigid boundaries between the territories of different species. Now there were flowing networks of cooperation and trade. Ships from dozens of civilizations moved freely through space that had once been restricted, their designs blending technologies from multiple cultures into forms that would have been impossible under the old system. The station itself was a marvel that demonstrated the new galactic reality. Built jointly by Vorthak crystal engineers, Kalari bio-architects, and human consciousness technicians, it existed partially in normal space and partially in pocket dimensions that could expand or contract based on need. The morning reports. Administrator, said his aide, Seulgi, a enhanced Andramin, whose species had achieved in 5 years what the Council had prevented them from accomplishing in millennia. Minsok reviewed the data flowing through the station's consciousness network. Agricultural yields were up across all inhabited systems, thanks to bioengineering advances shared freely between species. Scientific discoveries were accelerating exponentially as researchers from different backgrounds collaborated without artificial barriers. Most remarkably, conflicts had virtually disappeared. When conscious beings could understand each other's perspectives directly, when resources could be created rather than fought over, when the universe itself offered unlimited space for expansion, war became not just pointless but incomprehensible. Any word from the deep space exploration mission? Minsok asked. Sulgi's enhanced consciousness touched the station's communication network and accessed real-time data from the edge of the galaxy. Captain Jisoo reports successful contact with the Andromedan Collective. They're impressed with our progress. Minsok smiled. The Andromedan Collective was a civilization that had undergone its own consciousness revolution several million years earlier. They had been observing the Milky Way galaxy for eons, waiting to see if its inhabitants would develop beyond the primitive stage of territorial competition. What did they say exactly? Quote, "Congratulations on graduating from adolescence. Welcome to the cosmic community. You're ready for the advanced classes." The cosmic community. It was still difficult for Minseok to grasp the full implications of what humanity had revealed. The universe was not empty space dotted with isolated civilizations struggling for survival. It was a vast network of consciousness that spanned multiple galaxies, all connected through methods that transcended physical space. Earth's children had been among the youngest members of this community. Their exile and return had been part of a carefully orchestrated process designed to help their galaxy develop naturally while preparing for eventual contact with the larger universe. Administrator, Sulgi continued, we're also receiving the final reports from the Transition Evaluation Committee. All major species have made their choices regarding enhancement. Minsok accessed the data directly through his neural interface. The results were remarkable. 67% of galactic species had chosen some form of consciousness expansion. 28% had chosen to maintain their traditional forms while accepting guidance and protection from enhanced beings. Only 5% had chosen complete isolation. Even the isolationists were provided for. Protected worlds had been established where unchanged species could develop according to their own pace, free from outside interference but also free from the artificial limitations that the Council had imposed. The Vorthak transformation statistics are particularly interesting, Sulgi noted. 73% of their population has undergone at least basic consciousness expansion. Their crystal matrices have proved remarkably compatible with human enhancement techniques. That had been one of the pleasant surprises. Each species that chose enhancement discovered unique capabilities that emerged from the combination of their biological heritage and expanded consciousness. The Vorthak could store and process vast amounts of information in their crystal structures. The Kalari could coordinate complex activities across thousands of individuals. The Nexari could manipulate energy in ways that approached magic. What about the former council leadership? Minseok asked. Former General Korthul has requested assignment to the Deep Space Exploration Fleet. He says he wants to see what lies beyond the galaxy that was worth giving up the old ways for. Minsok chuckled. Korthul had been one of the most vocal opponents of human intervention. His transformation from military commander to explorer symbolized the broader changes taking place throughout the galaxy. And the economic reports? post-scarcity. Protocols are functioning well in all enhanced systems. Matter synthesis technology has eliminated resource conflicts. The few remaining trade disputes involve cultural preferences rather than actual needs. Post-scarcity had been the inevitable result of consciousness-directed technology. When beings could manipulate matter at the quantum level, when they could create pocket dimensions for expansion, when they could synthesize any needed materials from basic elements, the economic systems based on scarcity became obsolete. The challenge now was cultural rather than technological. Species that had defined themselves through struggle and competition had to learn new ways of finding meaning and purpose. Many had turned to exploration, art, and the pursuit of knowledge for its own sake. "Sir," Seulgi said, her voice carrying new urgency, "we're receiving a priority transmission from the Galactic Integration Council." Minsok's consciousness touched the communication network and received the data directly. What he experienced made him gasp in wonder. The message came from Captain Jisu's Deep Space Fleet, but it carried more than just words. It transmitted experiences, emotions, and knowledge that could only be shared between enhanced consciousnesses. Through Jisu's eyes, Minseok saw the Andromedan delegation, beings of such advanced consciousness that they existed as pure thought, given form. But beyond them, he saw something that took his breath away. The cosmic community was vast beyond imagination. Millions of galaxies, each containing billions of conscious species, all connected through networks of consciousness that spanned the universe itself. Some civilizations built structures that encompassed entire galactic clusters. Others existed as collective consciousnesses that spanned multiple dimensions. And at the center of it all was a purpose that dwarfed anything Minsok had imagined. The cosmic community was working together on projects that involved the fundamental structure of reality itself. They were creating new universes, exploring dimensions that existed beyond space and time, preparing for challenges that came from outside the universe entirely. "They're offering us full membership," Jisu's voice carried across the light years, filled with awe. "Not just contact, but participation in projects that span millions of years. They say our approach to consciousness expansion is unique and valuable." Minsok felt a moment of vertigo as he realized the full implications. The galaxy that had once seemed so vast was actually a small neighborhood in a universe-spanning civilization, and humanity, which had been thought extinct just 5 years earlier, was being invited to participate in endeavors that involved the fate of reality itself. "What do we need to do?" he asked. "Keep growing," came Jisu's reply. "The cosmic community doesn't require us to abandon who we are or where we came from. They want us to become the best version of ourselves and then share that with the universe." Minsok closed his eyes and felt the weight of infinite possibility. When he opened them again, he was looking at a galaxy full of species that had chosen to grow beyond their limitations. Former enemies worked together on projects that would have been impossible under the old system. Civilizations that had been kept small and fearful were reaching for achievements that surpassed their wildest dreams. "Sulgi," he said quietly, "prepare a galaxy-wide announcement. It's time everyone knew what we're really part of." Within hours, the news spread through every enhanced consciousness network in the galaxy. The universe was not empty space waiting to be conquered, but a vast community of consciousness waiting to welcome new members who had learned wisdom along with power. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Applications flooded in from species wanting to join the deep space exploration missions. Scientists requested access to cosmic-level research projects. Artists began creating works inspired by the knowledge that their audience might span multiple galaxies. But perhaps the most significant response came from the children. Young beings who had grown up during the transformation looked at the cosmic community not with fear or awe, but with eager anticipation. To them, the idea of participating in universe-spanning projects seemed natural and exciting rather than overwhelming. "They don't see barriers where we see challenges," observed Dr. Boyoung during a conference with the Integration Council. "The next generation will accomplish things we can barely imagine because they're growing up with expanded consciousness as their baseline." That evening, Min Seok attended the launch ceremony for the first truly galactic fleet. The ships were marvels that combined the best technologies and consciousness techniques from dozens of